Welcome to Certified Information Security's workshop on ISO 31000 Enterprise Risk Management. I'm Alan Keele. Thanks for joining me. This course prepares you to pursue certification as an ISO 31000 Certified Internal Controls Risk Analyst. The ISO 31000 CICRA certification is the risk management credential supporting a career in risk management, cybersecurity management, AI management, and business continuity or disaster recovery management. This certification validates your competence and understanding for developing and managing a custom risk management methodology based upon ISO risk management frameworks. Completing the full certification and training program for ISO 31000 CICRA ensures that you'll be equipped with the knowledge and skills to develop, manage, monitor, and improve an enterprise risk management system in line with ISO standards of best practice. You'll expand your risk management competency, increase your credibility through gaining international recognition, and you'll improve your resume or CV to help increase your earning potential. Complete program and certification details are available at Certified Information Security's website. The CICRA certification is available to qualified candidates who are a member of CIS in good standing. If you're not already an associate member of the CIS certification student body, you must first become a member to pursue the CICRA credential. You'll need to attend the required CIS-approved curriculum course, live or online, such as this CIS Policy Workshop ISO 31000 Enterprise Risk Management. You'll also need to pass your CICRA exam, RM 101. CIS exams are administered online and can be taken at your convenience at your home or work through the CIS Online Learning Center, where your progress and score are monitored and recorded centrally. Your exam results are provided automatically upon completion of your exam. You'll also need to complete and submit your ISO 31000 CICRA certification application to the CIS Certification Department at certifiedinfosec.com. Certification applications are available for download from CIS's website. You'll officially become certified or certificated once your exam results and required documentation are validated and approved by the certification committee. Your digital credential certificates and badges will be processed and emailed to you within 10 business days following the receipt of the required documentation. As you'll learn later in this course, ISO requires performing a risk-based approach for its other ISO certification specifications for information security and cybersecurity in ISO 27001, for business continuity and disaster recovery in ISO 22301, as well as for artificial intelligence management in ISO 42001. Accordingly, this CICRA certification and the corresponding ISO 31000 Enterprise Risk Management training is prerequisite for eligibility for ISO 27001 Lead Implementer, ISO 27001 Certified Internal Controls Architect, as well as the ISO 27001 Lead Auditor credential. Likewise, achieving ISO 31000 CICRA certification is also prerequisite for eligibility to pursue ISO 22301 Certified Business Continuity Strategist, as well as the ISO 22301 Certified Business Continuity Manager. ISO 42001 AI management systems also require using a risk-based approach based upon ISO 31000 in conjunction with ISO 23894 to perform risk assessments as the core of managing AI. Accordingly, the ISO 42001 AI Lead Implementer certification also requires the ISO 31000 CICRA credential as prerequisite training and certification. So let's take a look at the agenda for this course. We'll begin with an introduction to enterprise risk management. We'll then continue with risk architecture and strategy, to be followed with the process of performing risk assessments. We'll then move on to controlling, reducing, and managing risk through risk treatment. And then finally, we'll look at communicating risk management, monitoring of risk, as well as reporting and improving our risk management capability. In this introduction, we'll get a better understanding of what risk actually is. We'll then learn how risk management drives information security, cybersecurity, management of artificial intelligence throughout the organization, as well as using risk management and business impact assessment to drive business continuity and disaster recovery management. And then finally, we'll get an idea of how to use all of this to get started in better managing risk throughout the enterprise. And before we begin, I'd like to talk about the primary reference sources that are used in this ISO 31000 Enterprise Risk Management course. Now, of course, a lot of the content is based on ISO 31000. ISO 31000 is the standard that helps organizations develop a risk management strategy to effectively identify and mitigate risks, thereby enhancing the likelihood of achieving their objectives and increasing the protection of their assets. And while ISO 31000 may provide the backbone of managing risk in general throughout the enterprise, ISO has released some specialty recommendation guidance standards for managing particular kinds of risk, such as the risk of artificial intelligence. In 2023, ISO released the ISO IC standard 23894, entitled Information Technology, Artificial Intelligence, Guidance on Risk Management. This standard provides guidance on how organizations that utilize artificial intelligence to develop, produce, deploy, or use products, systems, and services can manage risk specifically related to AI. And since AI is now integrated throughout all operations, both in IT as well as operations technology, we can see how ISO 23894 could be practically applied even at the top of an organization's enterprise risk management, because almost all of our operations and processes throughout the organization are being enhanced and facilitated by AI. This guidance also aims to assist organizations to integrate risk management into their AI-related activities and functions, as well as describing the processes for effective implementation and integration of AI risk management. The application of the guidance of the ISO 23894 standard can be customized to any organization and its business context. And because we use this course to provide the information you need to better assess risk when practicing a risk-based approach for information security management with ISO 27001, we'll also be using the ISO 27005 risk management guidance document to help us understand implementation of the information security risk requirements specified in ISO 27001. We'll also learn the essential references within the standards developed by ISO to support information security risk management activities. We'll learn the actions that address risk to information security, as well as implementation of risk management guidance in ISO 31000 in the context of information security. So let's begin by really understanding what risk actually is. Is risk a harmful event in and of itself? Or is risk something that causes a harmful event to occur? Or is risk something that makes a potential harmful event more likely? Well, it turns out that actually the risk event itself is actually considered the risk consequence, incident, or event. And whatever causes an undesired consequence is considered a threat. And then finally, something that makes a threat more likely or more capable, which is inducing greater undesired consequence, is actually considered more of a hazard. Now, I say this because we use the term risk to describe very different things, which is what makes the study of risk management somewhat cumbersome and awkward, because too often we come to this presentation with a preconceived notion of what a risk actually is. So we need to learn really what is risk so we can actually manage risk. Sometimes we refer to risk more as our level of vulnerability or susceptibility to a harmful event. Really, anything that makes the organization more susceptible to a harmful event is actually known as a vulnerability, not as a risk. Or we should also consider whether or not risk itself is actually a bad thing. Is it always undesired? Is it always considered bad? Well, let me ask you, is chance always a bad thing? For example, having the chance to succeed, the chance to win the lotto. Is this a bad thing? No, of course not. This is why we often hear risk equals return. So really, risk then isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. Perhaps an undesired risk event or incident is, but risk is actually the uncertainty of whether or not an event will actually occur, good or bad. So as you can see, if risk is the same word that we use to describe a vulnerability, a threat, a likelihood, or a risk consequence, the following statement would make sense. For example, our organization is at risk that a risk could increase the risk of a bad risk. It makes no sense. What if we were to say our organization has a vulnerability to a threat that could increase the likelihood of causing a bad consequence? This is a better use of our language to describe the various aspects of that uncertainty that we call risk. So actually, the purest understanding of risk is that risk correlates to chance or uncertainty of outcome. This was originally published by George Head in the Journal of Risk and Insurance, Volume 34, Number 2, back in 1967. As such, risk, again, is not necessarily a good or bad thing by definition, because it's not a thing, even though the word is often used to directly describe anything and everything related to what contributes to or even results from the uncertainty of an outcome. Managing risk is actually about managing the certainty or uncertainty of an outcome, regardless of whether the outcome is good, meaning desired or beneficial, or not good, meaning detrimental or undesired. So if we get rid of the habit of always thinking that a risk is actually an undesired event, but rather risk is simply that element of uncertainty about an event and its likelihood to actually happen, we could actually apply this to good things such as desired performance, profitability, efficiency, other things that we want to occur. How can we make those good things occur with more certainty? By eliminating uncertainty or chance or risk. So managing success then really means that we increase the certainty of opportunities and making the most of those opportunities with certainty. Managing success then requires promoting and creating opportunities for success, making success more likely. which is identifying any process or resources that can make success more likely or more impactful. So we look for opportunities to increase revenues beyond what they currently are, for opportunities to decrease costs, for opportunities to improve reputation. And we could look for any other opportunities that we can identify or encourage for our organization, and then try to manage the uncertainty of achieving those goals through better uncertainty or risk management. Now, we can increase the likelihood of good things happening by calculating how we can be in the right place at the right time. But also understand that managing success also requires managing anything that impedes or interferes with success. So if managing and maximizing success is the goal, organizations also need to identify and control anything that could impede or impair the organization's ability or likelihood of achieving success. This means that if we identify and control the organization's vulnerabilities to things that would impede our success, that if we could control the effect of threats that impede our success, well, by reducing those vulnerabilities and reducing those threats, we would correspondingly increase our certainty or likelihood of success. That means that success management requires risk management. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a key point. Another confusing set of concepts that we need to clean up are our understanding of risk management versus crisis management. Too often, since we think of a risk as an undesired event, an incident that we don't want to happen, then we automatically think that managing a risk is actually managing the impact of a bad event that has already occurred. That's not actually managing risk, which is uncertainty or certainty of outcome. That's actually just managing, well, the impact of the incident itself. That's crisis management. So we use the term risk management to cover both events that may or may not happen and the likelihood of them, as well as the events that have actually already happened. There's no uncertainty at all as to whether they happened, but we still call it all risk management. We need to stop that. We have risk management where we manage potential events that could occur or not. We use crisis management, consequence management, to manage events that have actually already occurred. If it was a good event, we want to be able to exploit it to its full potential. If it was a bad event, we want to minimize the dangerous impact of that bad event as much as possible. But since the event's already occurred, we're really just managing consequence, not likelihood of whether it'll occur or not. It occurred. So let's get back to this. Risk management then is where we anticipate a potential good or bad event. And we try to determine if it's a good event, what could we do to make it more likely, and prepare accordingly and put all the right things in place to make that more likely. Whether it means attracting more market share or increasing profitability and sales, there are things that we can do to make that more likely. And that, believe it or not, is risk management, because you're taking the chance out of whether or not you achieve success. We want to achieve success with certainty, and so we try to do so by plan. Okay, well, it turns out we can also have undesired events that could impede our ability to succeed. And we want to try to minimize the likelihood of bad events occurring. So we try to do everything in our power to, well, manage our vulnerabilities to bad events and to minimize the capability and likelihood of the threats that would take advantage of our vulnerabilities and thereby cause us to not achieve our desired objectives. So in anticipation of an event that hasn't even occurred, We know that we can optimize ahead of time to try to make a good event happen, and we can also try to implement controls or risk avoidance or perhaps risk transfer to try to minimize the likelihood that bad events will occur. And we do this by managing threats and vulnerabilities. Okay, so this means that again, ahead of the event, we need to first look at risk identification and assessment to determine how to stop bad things from happening or to encourage good things to happen. We need to identify, well, what it is that we need to manage. We need to identify that, and we need to assess that for likelihood. Then we look at how can we then, in step 3, modify that chance or that risk, that uncertainty, to make good things happen more likely and to make bad things less likely. There are controls that we can put into place that make us less vulnerable to a bad event occurring. Therefore, bad events become less likely. We can put controls in place that make threats less capable. Therefore, make bad events less likely. We're managing likelihood ahead of an event that hasn't even occurred. That is likelihood management, which is management of chance, which is risk management. Okay, so it turns out, however, that when an event occurs, a good event or a bad event, how do we handle that? Well, if it's a good event, we happen to have been in the right place at the right time. Sales have far exceeded any imagination of potential. We're selling more than we ever thought we could. Doggone it, we ran out of stock. You didn't manage that good event very well. You weren't prepared to take full advantage of the increase in sales. You didn't manage that risk, that chance of good things happening by having enough stock ahead of time. So that means we do things ahead of an event that could be good to prepare us to better take advantage of that good event if and when it does occur. And then likewise, we recognize that despite our best risk management ahead of an event on bad events, we may have tried to control threats ahead of time. We may have tried to control vulnerabilities ahead of time. But unfortunately, chance is chance. It's unpredictable. There was still some chance that the bad thing would happen. If it does and the event occurs, we are no longer in risk management. We are now into consequence management. How do we make the best of a bad situation? How do we minimize the loss and impact of a bad event that has occurred? Now, we would have done some preparation ahead of time to make us better at that incident response, just like we did preparation ahead of time for a good event as well. So we have certain things that we can do that help us manage likelihood better by identifying and assessing risk and then controlling or modifying the likelihood of that chance or risk ahead of an event. And then finally, when the event does occur, good or bad, we are also prepared to manage it efficiently and effectively because we planned ahead of time on how to do it well. And that means that we need to be good risk managers, but also recognize that events do happen, and therefore we need to be good consequence managers. So this is the difference then between risk management and crisis management. By the way, if you look at this graphic, it may occur to you that that looks somewhat like a bow tie. This is known as the risk bow tie model. It's not a new idea. A link is provided for your convenience on this page in case you just can't get enough of the bow tie model. And then finally, if all of this is so obviously good to do, why is it that we're not doing it or doing it better? Why is it that we haven't figured out how to develop good processes to do better risk management and practice those by plan, not by chance. How do we manage the risk of good risk management? Well, that is governance. And this is where frameworks have stepped in to recognize, whether it's NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 or the Risk Management Framework for AI, the AI RMF 1.0 by NIST. Now we recognize that if we don't have a good governance capability to ensure that these activities happen, that we perform high quality risk assessments, and that we really do well in our planning to manage risk. If that was never required by leadership, if it was never the intent of the organization to manage risk well, then, well, there's a good chance that we don't manage it. We just kind of fall into it. We can succeed with more certainty. We will absolutely succeed more often to greater heights by planning to do so with good risk management. But if we don't have governance that assigns the right roles and responsibilities throughout the organization to practice this risk management, it doesn't actually get done. And we suffer for it. So remember what I said. If success management is important to your organization, why wouldn't you have leaders require it instead of hope for it? And this is the basis of good governance. So most frameworks, including ISO 31000, NIST AI RMF, ISO 23894, all require that a good risk program begins with good risk governance to ensure that good risk processes actually happen. So organizations of all types and sizes face internal and external factors and influences, again, that bring uncertainty as to whether and when they will achieve their desired objectives. And again, the effect that this uncertainty has on an organization's objectives is risk. All activities of an organization involve some level of chance or risk. Organizations manage risk by identifying it, analyzing it, and then evaluating whether the risk should be modified by risk treatment or controls in order to satisfy the organization's own tolerance for risk or uncertainty of positive outcome. So throughout the process, they communicate and consult with stakeholders and monitor and review the risk and controls that are modifying the risk in order to ensure that no further risk treatment is required. Enterprise risk management in business includes the methods and processes used by organizations to manage risk and seize opportunities related to the achievement of the organization's objectives. So we hear enterprise risk management. What is it? ERM provides the framework for a systematic approach to better risk management, which typically involves identifying particular events or circumstances relevant to the organization's objectives. These are known as risks and opportunities, assessing them in terms of likelihood and magnitude of impact, determining a response strategy, and then monitoring progress. And by identifying and proactively addressing risk and opportunities, business enterprises protect and create value for their stakeholders, including owners, employees, customers, regulators, and society overall. ERM can also be described as a risk-based approach to managing an enterprise, integrating concepts of internal control and strategic planning. ERM is evolving to address the needs of various stakeholders who want to understand the broad spectrum of risk facing complex organizations to ensure that they are appropriately managed. Regulators and debt rating agencies have also increased their scrutiny on the risk management processes of companies because they have a vested interest that the company is managing their success through good risk management. The process of risk assessment and risk management provides the foundation for internal controls management, as well as business continuity and disaster recovery management. After all, the information security management system and the business continuity management system, and today even the AI management system, exist purely to manage some kind of risk or certainty of positive outcome. This means that an ISMS or BCMS can only be as good as the organization's ability to create, authorize, and practice a single consistent approach to assessing and treating risks. We'll now learn how we use risk management to drive better information security, cybersecurity, AI management, and business continuity management. Since 2015, ISO has required that organizations practice a risk-based approach to management of various aspects of their organization. With ISO 27001, Information Security Management, we are required to conduct information security risk assessments as the backbone of our information security, privacy management, and cybersecurity management capability. Likewise, ISO 42001 AI management is actually AI risk management. 9001 for quality doesn't create quality. It's where we manage risk to quality, and it requires an ISO 31000 based risk-based approach to managing quality. 22301 business continuity management, the same. 37301 compliance management, the same, as well as even ISO 37001 anti-bribery and anti-corruption management, also requiring that we conduct fraud risk assessments as the backbone to managing bribery and corruption risk. And this is how we can understand that enterprise risk management is actually the core and harmonizer for all other specialty risk managing subprograms in the organization. Matter of fact, in the ISO standards for these subprograms, there are often hard explicit references to ISO 31000's approach to risk assessment and risk management. And this is why enterprise risk management and related specialty risk managing frameworks have become the core of our own training and certification programs here at Certified Information Security. And as many times as I say it, I still find doubters. I find people that tell us, no, we don't need risk management, we need information security management. So we don't want to have the ISO 31000 enterprise risk management as part of our information security management program. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at what ISO says about that. In the ISO 27001 standard, the most recent revision in 2022, you see in clause 6.1.2, information security risk assessment. Now it describes what we need to accomplish with our risk assessments. It turns out that ISO 27001 didn't create this from scratch. They merely took the outputs, the deliverables from ISO 31000 and 27005, and created requirements from those outputs in its own 27001 standard. And ISO 27001 carries forward with Clause 6.1.3, Information Security Risk Treatment, which are the controls, which mean the 93 controls listed in Annex A are really all the result of a risk management process of risk assessment and risk treatment. The organization shall define and apply an information security risk treatment process to accomplish these deliverables, which were actually the outputs of ISO 31000 and 27005. And in case there is any doubt, in ISO 27001, At the bottom of Clause 6.1.3, we see Note, the information security risk assessment and treatment process in this document aligns with the principles and generic guidelines provided in ISO 31000. So there you have it. To have ISO 27001 means you need to practice the risk management of ISO 31000. And even in ISO 42001 AI management, it also requires implementing a risk-based approach to managing artificial intelligence that's integrated into the organization's IT, operations technology, and even Internet of Things in Clause 6.1, Planning, Actions to Address Risk and Opportunities. Clause 6.1.1, in general, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in 4.1, which was context of the organization. It shall perform risk assessments. It shall have AI risk treatment and controls, and it shall perform AI system impact assessment. And all of this will be done according to the guidance of 23894 as the helper standard that actually rides on ISO 31000. This program will actually cover a lot of the recommendations of ISO 23894 because this is a very, very unique risk framework that was actually purposely built to ride on ISO 31000. If you purchase the ISO 23894 standard, you'll see that it actually has crosswalks throughout saying this is what ISO 31000 recommends, and towards that end, for that clause and that subclause, this is what we would add for AI risk management. So it uses ISO 31000 as its main body and then simply says this is the same, or this is where we would add a bit more for AI risk management. So again, in ISO 23894 for AI management, ISO 23894 is intended to be used in connection with ISO 31000. And wherever and whenever ISO 23894 extends the guidance given in 31000, an appropriate reference to those ISO 31000 clauses are made that are then followed by AI-specific guidance if applicable. And to make the relationship between ISO 23894 and ISO 31000 even more explicit, even the clause structure of ISO 31000 is mirrored exactly in 23894 and then perhaps added to and amended with additional subclauses as necessary. This course again will include coverage of 23894's additional guidance as it applies to the ISO 31000's general risk assessment and risk management recommendations. So what if we are practicing one or more of these various ISO management system standards within our organization? Well, they're all pointing back to ISO 31000 as their core. So if we need a consistent, formal, and documented approach for risk management, what established framework should we use? Well, using one standardized framework doesn't preclude us from blending it with another. For example, we can use a combination of ISO 31000 along with ISO 31010, as you'll learn later on in this course. We can augment it with special recommendations for information security risk management with ISO 27005 recommendations. We can augment our enterprise risk management system with recommendations for AI risk management from ISO 23894. And then it turns out we even have non-ISO risk frameworks that we are allowed to blend in to our overall enterprise risk management program that we purpose build for our organization. So we may actually have a blend or combination of ISO risk management with its various frameworks, as well as perhaps even COSO, the committee of the sponsoring organization for the Treadway Commission, with its enterprise risk management. So again, two of the most common true high-level enterprise risk management system frameworks are the ISO 31000 standard as well as COSO. However, if you're building a program to guide and support the risk requirements for other ISO-based systems such as 22301 BCM, 27001 InfoSec, 9001 Quality Management, maybe even 42001 AI Management, doesn't it kind of make sense to use the ISO standard they all refer to for enterprise risk management, that being ISO 31000? So again, what does combining ISO 31000, 31010, 27005, and the new 23894 deliver? 31000 gives us our formal documented risk management system that specs out the risk management architecture with roles and responsibilities and scoping and strategy. 31010 and 27005 go more to the process of risk assessment and risk treatment that are operated within an ISO 31000 risk management program. So 31000 tends to be more of a program standard, and then the actual process specifics are really explored more deeply in other guidance standards, helper standards to ISO 31000. For example, ISO 31010 Annex B gives us a catalog of many risk assessment protocols or processes appropriate for various steps in a risk assessment and risk evaluation process. And again, ISO 23894 provides additional guidance on how organizations that develop, produce, deploy, or use products and systems and services that utilize AI can manage risk specifically related to AI. And this guidance also aims to assist organizations in integrating risk management into their AI-related activities and functions. Now, another honorable mention of an external risk managing framework would be the NIST AI Risk Management Framework that the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States released back in 2023. The AI Risk Management Framework 1.0 is another risk management framework specifically targeting management of the AI system lifecycle. However, it's beyond the scope of this ISO Enterprise Risk Management course. You can learn more about the NIST AI RMF 1.0 at Certified Information Security, and a link is provided for your convenience. Now, the core of the NIST AI RMF comprises 4 specific functions to help organizations address the risk of AI systems in practice, meaning that it addresses the govern function, which I explained is so important. It then goes on to risk identification and risk assessment in the map function. It continues with risk assessment in the measure function, and then it moves into risk treatment in the manage function. And just to give you a teaser as to how extensive the AI RMF is for AI risk management, those 4 functions are broken down into 19 subject matter categories. Those 19 subject matter categories are broken down into 76 subcategories that are actually desired objectives or outcomes of AI risk management. Well, NIST AI RMF then breaks that down into 460 recommended implementation actions to fulfill those AI risk management deliverables or objectives for the AI risk management framework. So as you can see, we now have 4 functions, 19 subject matter categories, 76 objectives or deliverables for our AI management system that are then carried out through 460 recommended implementation tasks, and that is all covered in our Certified Information Security AI RMF 1.0 training program. Again, more information is available on Certified Information Security's website, and there's a nice hour-long introduction to that course available in our free webinar section of the website. So what does ISO 31000, 31010, 27005, and 23894 deliver? Again, collectively, these 4 standards give us a nice comprehensive approach to risk management, assessment, treatment, monitoring, and reporting that is required in all other ISO management system specification standards. So AI risk management again will likely benefit from leveraging the more extensive guidance of the NIST AI RMF. And we'll cover that more in depth in the ISO 42001 lead implementer training, as well as the NIST AI RMF 1.0 training. So let's look at how to get started. We'll get started by, we need to train the people that will be involved in understanding what it is that they need to be doing and what it is they need to set up and put into place. We need to develop the skills and competence for the organization's own risk management capability. So the very first risk to assess is the organization's risk management culture and methodology itself. Does your management have the skills and know-how to perform professional risk assessment and risk management? Is risk assessment and risk management led by people who have the authority to make risk decisions? Because if the wrong people are tasked with managing and deciding upon risks are often left unidentified or untreated. And if the wrong people make risk decisions, risk is likely to be either overtreated or undertreated, but is rarely spot on for what the organization really needs. And risk management should be made from the top down by people who are truly accountable to stakeholders for the performance of the organization. The dilemma is that oftentimes our governance doesn't know what it doesn't know. So we have the dilemma of a board that may lack the knowledge and risk vocabulary to engage in a productive dialogue with management, and we need to fix that before they can actually require that the rest of us be more competent in risk management. After all, they're the ones that decide what we need to do. We also have perhaps a CEO who seeks strategic dialogue about risk, but because there is no risk management program in place formally, the CEO often has to rely on intuition. We may have a chief risk officer in title only. Oftentimes the chief risk officer may understand risk, but often, unfortunately, has little influence on actual decision making. We may have a chief financial officer that actually is the person guiding the practice of risk management, but perhaps with almost the sole focus on financial risk, having a very siloed perspective of risk. Similar with the treasurer's office. And then we also have business units, our operations throughout the organization that actually manage the risk or uncertainty of successfully achieving organizational goals and objectives throughout all organizational processes. But unfortunately, oftentimes, the people at this level lack the sophistication and time to understand, much less measure, their own risks. And besides, they're not actually authorized to decide upon risk tolerance and risk treatment to begin with. That guidance should have been provided from the top down, but wasn't, because we don't have a good formal risk management system in place. If we leverage ISO 31000 to develop this systematic approach to managing uncertainty and managing risk, then the board can then more effectively achieve success in a planned and systematic way. Certified Information Security also has available a nice ISO 31000 policy document template toolkit. Now, this template toolkit is provided at no extra charge with our live in-person instructor-led training, but is available as a separate purchase for those that are doing online on-demand self-study training. Wow, what an introduction. This concludes the introduction to our ISO 31000 Enterprise Risk Management Policy Workshop. Our next stop is to learn more about the actual risk framework architecture and strategy. This is where we'll plan and establish the framework for enterprise risk management. I'm Alan Keele. Thanks for joining me.